In the 13th century, a storm rose from the eastern steppe Chon, and Europe did not yet understand what was coming.
The Mongols were not just raiders. They were an army built for movement, intelligence, and speed. Before battle, they gathered information, sending scouts far ahead of the main army. Their greatest weapon was the horse archer, who could strike, vanish, and return.
Before Europe itself faced the storm, the Rus principalities felt its first pressure.
Reports came of horsemen who moved faster than armies were supposed to move. At the Kalka River, the Rus learned that the Mongols could turn retreat into a trap. They could pretend to flee, pull enemies out of formation, and strike when discipline collapsed. What began in the east would soon reach the forests, castles, and cathedrals of Europe. This is the story of the Mongol invasion of Europe, the day the continent almost fell. After victories across Asia, Mongol commanders turned their eyes toward the western lands. A Mongol army traveled with spare horses, organized supply, and a system that kept it moving. They used winter as a road, crossing frozen rivers that stopped other armies. In the Rus lands, towns prepared behind wooden walls, hoping timber could stop the steppe. The Mongols were not only horse archers. They brought siege engineers and learned quickly.
Dona nobis pacem.
Agnus Dei, qui tollis peccata mundi.
Town after town fell, and the road west opened wider. Monasteries and courts heard rumors of destruction before they understood its scale. In Poland, nobles gathered to face an enemy unlike the armies they knew. The first warning for many villages was the sight of families already fleeing. Mongol scouts moved ahead of the army, mapping roads, rivers, and fear. European knights trusted armor, courage, and the shock of the mounted charge.
The Mongols did not seek one simple clash. They shaped the battlefield before entering it.
Near Legnica, European forces formed for battle, hoping to stop the storm. The Mongols advanced in waves, loose enough to move, disciplined enough to obey every signal. The knights prepared to do what had won battles for generations: charge. Then the Mongols did what they had done across Asia. They made retreat look real. Smoke, dust, and movement broke the battlefield into confusion. Once formations stretched, Mongol horse archers surrounded isolated groups. Legnica ended in disaster for the defenders, and Europe understood the danger was real. News traveled west by frightened messengers, monks, merchants, and survivors. Courts across Central Europe wondered whether Poland was only the beginning.
In Hungary, the danger was even greater. The main Mongol army was moving toward the kingdom. The Hungarian plain gave the Mongols room to move, and movement was their greatest strength. Through the Carpathian passes, the Mongol army entered Hungary. Villages had little time. The army that crossed the mountains moved faster than warnings. The Hungarian king gathered nobles and troops, but unity came slowly under pressure. Inside the Hungarian camp, strategy was divided by pride, fear, and uncertainty. The Mongols studied the Sayo River and looked for ways to break the Hungarian position. The bridge over the Sakho became the first point of danger. The Hungarians made a wagon camp, hoping a tight defense would protect them.
But the Mongols did not attack from one direction alone. At dawn, fighting erupted at the bridge. While one force fixed the defenders, another crossed elsewhere and moved around them.
The Hungarian camp realized too late that the battlefield had changed around them.
Mongol horse archers pressed from every side, turning space into a weapon. The wagon camp became a trap as fear, smoke, and crowding broke discipline. Mongol command remained controlled, using signals and reserves to keep pressure constant. Some defenders tried to escape, but the open plain favored the horsemen waiting outside. Mohi shattered Hungary's main army and opened the kingdom to devastation. The Hungarian ruler fled west and south, searching for safety and allies. For civilians, defeat meant roads filled with hunger, panic, and unanswered prayers. The Mongol columns spread across Hungary with terrifying speed. Stone fortresses offered better protection than open towns. A lesson Europe would not forget. The Mongols could break many defenses, but strong stone castles slowed them. Monks recorded the invasion as if the end of the world had ridden out of the east. Appeals for help traveled west, but Europe was divided by politics, distance, and disbelief. Church leaders heard warnings that the invaders might push beyond Hungary into the heart of Europe. The Mongols did not simply raid and vanish. They wintered, reorganized, and prepared. When the Danube froze, even the river became a road for invasion. For towns beyond the river, winter brought no protection. The Mongol army adapted to cold, distance, and terrain with frightening discipline. Then a message arrived from the east, news that would change the fate of Europe. The death of the Great Khan created a political crisis that demanded attention far from Europe. The Mongol commanders began pulling their forces away from Hungary. Europe had not defeated the Mongols in one final battle. The storm had turned back. When survivors returned, they found a country wounded beyond recognition. Hungary rebuilt with a new understanding. Stone castles could decide survival. Across Europe, rulers studied the invasion and asked how close they had come to catastrophe. The invasion changed European strategy, memory, and fear. For the Mongols, Europe was only one front in a vast imperial world. Their success came from speed, intelligence, discipline, and enemies who rarely united in time. The Mongol invasion was not only a story of armies. It was a story of people facing a force they could barely understand. Next, Europe prepares for the storm, Tanut. But the question remains, what if the Mongols had returned? After Legnica, Europe knew the danger. But the main storm was still crashing into Hungary. Hungary's open plains gave the Mongols exactly what they wanted: space to move. Before armies met, civilians felt the invasion first, in bells, rumors, and roads filled with carts. Mongol scouts spread ahead, measuring roads, rivers, villages, and weaknesses. The Hungarian army gathered in strength, but strength without unity could become fragile. Inside the council, nobles argued over whether to wait, pursue, or fortify. The Mongols studied the river carefully. One army would hold attention, another would find the flank. The bridge over the Sayo,
became the first door into the Hungarian camp. The attack did not move in one line. It spread like water finding cracks.
At dawn, the first pressure came at the bridge.
The Hungarian camp woke to alarms, shouting, and the belief that the main attack had begun. But while one force fought at the bridge, another crossed where the defenders were not looking. From higher ground, Mongol commanders controlled the battle with signals, timing, and reserves. The defenders discovered that the battle was no longer in front of them. It was all around them.
Mongol horse archers turned distance itself into a weapon.
Inside the camp, crowding and fear made command nearly impossible.
A path out appeared, but on the open plain, the Mongols were waiting.
The Mongols pursued not as a mob, but as a system.
Mohi broke the royal army, and with it, the shield of Hungary.
Hungary's ruler fled, searching for allies as the kingdom opened behind him. For ordinary people, the battle's result meant flight, hunger, and roads with no clear destination. Mongol forces spread out across Hungary, striking faster than resistance could gather. But stone castles changed the equation. They could slow what open fields could not. The Mongols could break many defenses, but strong stone castles slowed them. Inside the fortresses, people waited in hunger, cold, and prayer. Monks wrote of the invasion as if a judgment had ridden across the horizon. Hungary asked for help, but Europe was divided, distracted, and slow. Some prepared for the possibility that the Mongols would not stop in Hungary. In church halls, the question became terrifying. Could Europe survive another campaign? The Mongols did not vanish after victory. They wintered and reorganized. When the Danube froze, a natural barrier became a road. For towns beyond the river, winter brought no protection. The Mongol army adapted to cold, distance, and terrain with frightening discipline. Behind stone walls, the people waited for either rescue, starvation, or surrender. Then a message arrived from the east, carrying news more powerful than any fortress. The death of the Great Khan created a crisis that pulled Mongol attention away from Europe. The army that had broken Hungary began to prepare for withdrawal. Europe had not won one final battle. The storm had simply turned back. When survivors returned, silence told them how much had been lost. Hungary rebuilt with stone, because stone had survived where open towns had not. Across Europe, rulers studied what had happened and changed how they thought about defense. The invasion left a lesson written in fear. Speed could defeat pride, and walls could buy time.
For the Mongols, Europe was one frontier among many.
For European chroniclers, the withdrawal felt less like victory than mercy.
The war ended for armies before it ended for families.
The memory of the invasion rose in stone across the kingdom. European armies began to think more seriously about scouts, fortifications, and mobile defense. The Mongol advantage was not only battle tactics, it was communication over impossible distances.
Their victories came from speed, intelligence, logistics, and enemies who failed to unite quickly enough.
Legnica and Mohi became warnings, not just battles. In Poland, memory gathered around banners, prayers, and stories of a vanished army. Hungary's rebuilding was not only repair, it was preparation for a possible return. For years, Europeans feared the riders might come again. The Mongol Empire remained vast, but succession politics shaped where its armies would go next. In the Ruslands, Mongol power did not simply pass through. It settled into politics and tribute. The same empire that terrified Europe also connected roots across Eurasia. Fear slowly turned into questions. Who were these people, and how had they conquered so much? European envoys would later travel east, seeking answers from the empire that had almost reached them. The Mongol world was not chaos. It was organized, diplomatic, and brutally strategic.
In villages, the invasion became a story told to children as warning and memory.
The invasion revealed two military worlds: mobility against mass, distance against charge. A Mongol rider could fight while moving, forcing enemies to chase a target that would not stay still. European knights were powerful in the charge, but vulnerable when drawn into disorder. At Legnica and Mohi, the Mongols won by shaping movement before the final clash. The human cost was measured in empty homes, broken harvests, and families on roads. After the riders left, survival depended on ordinary work: repair, planting, rebuilding. Europle's answer to fear was not only prayer, it was stone. The chronicles preserved terror, but also the lesson that survival required adaptation. The steppe remained vast, and Europe knew the road from the east still existed. Every distant dust cloud could become a warning. Europe survived, but not because it had fully mastered the Mongol way of war. The invasion was a collision of worlds: steppe mobility, European feudal armies, and civilians trapped between them. The arrows moved east, but the memory stayed behind. From that memory rose stronger walls, watchful borders, and a continent more afraid of the horizon. Europe had survived the storm this face, but the question remained: what if the Mongols had returned?